Welcome back to Off Records On Point, the workplace culture podcast with the all-important twist. I'm Julia Linehan, founder and CEO of The Digital Voice.
And I'm Kasey Long. Today, we're joined by Tamara Littleton, founder and CEO of The Social Element and co-founder of Polpeo. And as always, you can check out the description for our usual list of resources to keep the conversation going. Here's a sneak peek at what's in store.
How do you rehearse going through a crisis? The only way you get your stripes is actually going through the crisis. And wouldn't it be amazing if brand leaders and PR people and people in marketing had the ability to actually go through a simulation and see what it's like? And so we just said, well, let's build it. So that's what we did.
We're ahead of our time, Tamara, I think is the basic takeaway.
Pioneers. If I can just move the needle a little bit and encourage other people to be their authentic self, then I want to do that, because in our industry, it's quite a liberal minded industry, but you still get the stage where people sometimes hide who they are. So it is about just representing.
So we're a little bit further off achieving inclusivity in that way, for example, in the number of founders that are. But when you talk about inclusive marketing, are we closer?
Today's episode is an exciting one, as we're diving into how to master crisis, culture, and change. Julia, give us the lowdown on what it all means.
Oh, do you know what? These are the 3 C's that I think are going to be so imperative to so many companies. Crisis, never been a more important time to get your house in order, and certainly be prepared for the worst, whether that be from greenwashing or gender pay gap or any situation that you find yourself in. And crisis simulation is something that, Tamara, I'm definitely excited for you to talk about. When we talk about culture is embedded very much in the heart of everything the Digital Voice does. I'm a huge believer in life-work balance and in that order. And I think those companies that put culture front and center are those that are going to lead from the front. So I'll be interested to hear what Tamara has to say on that. And the final one, it's about change. And this whole season has been about change makers and driving real change. And there's no doubt in my mind that we have one of the most important change makers in the industry with us today. So welcome, Tamara.
Yes.
So good to have you here.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me on.
You're very, very welcome. Tamara, I'm going to set you a challenge as our first question. In a minute or less, what I want you to do is say what you do and how you got to where you got to. A near impossible challenge in under a minute, but give it a go.
All right, I'll give it a go. So I founded The Social Element in 2002. So that's 22 years old next month.
Wow.
And we're a global social media agency working with incredible brands like Oreo, Nissan, Dr. Pepper, Visa.
Wow.
I'm also the co-founder of Polpeo, which started in 2013. So that's 9 years old. And it's a crisis simulation platform that lets brands rehearse going through a reputational crisis.
It is very cool. I've had the pleasure of joining once, and
it is super cool.
Yeah,
it's like immersive training. And how did I get here? My first job was after university. I was in online publishing at a time that it was very pioneering and working with sort of PDF files, which hadn't even been invented. Then I worked at BBC Online, running the webmaster team. So I'm a massive geek, and I ran the webmaster geeky team. And then I went to cello, which is where I first met Julia. We were at cello at the same time.
I know. What was it? Was it 2000?
Yeah, 2000 to 2002. And then I left there and I took redundancy money. They were a very generous Dutch company.
Weren't they just redundancy payouts?
3 months redundancy. So I started the company with that redundancy money. So that was the key.
Amazing.
bit. That's me. I don't know if that was a minute or not, but
that was pretty good. And that was
great.
So one of the things that I mentioned in my intro was about the game changers of today and those that are making a difference, those that are questioning or kind of, I suppose, challenging the status quo. You've done it, and it's interesting, you've not just done that, but you've done it while running 2 companies. So it's curious to know how the hell you pull it off.
So I think there are some things that, are just so normal to me, but obviously they were game changing at the time. So when I started The Social Element, so that's now a 300-person agency.
Wow.
Working across all different countries. But I started it remote first. And I think, if I touched on the fact that I was a bit of a geek, I was totally comfortable with working online and, managing people using like email, chat, whatever. But that model allowed us to move into America. We broke America. That was our first clients were in America. I think Disney was, it was
Wow.
like GE, Chevron, and Disney were the first three clients. So I think that of not being afraid to run an online company, remote first, and it stayed with us actually. So that really helped. And now, and I think during the pandemic, I must have done something like 30 podcasts of just telling people how the hell do you manage remote
Yeah.
teams. And of course, it's so normal now. But I think there was something about this, perhaps in my DNA. I love solving problems. I love pioneering. So the BBC was, before running my own company, it was the most exciting job because it was the late 90s and it was a time where the web was still quite new and communities were new. And that's where I got my inspiration to start the agency. It was very much built in community. So I kind of just love fixing problems. And then you take, Polpeo, we started a crisis simulation because there was a need for it. We were watching how, you might remember, Nestle was not coping well with some backlash. And then there were other companies. People were getting slammed on social media. And I was saying to Kate Hartley, my co-founder, and we just sort of said that, how do you rehearse going through a crisis? The only way you get your stripes is actually going through the crisis. And wouldn't it be amazing if brand leaders and PR people and people in marketing had the ability to actually go through a simulation and see what it's like? And so we just said, well, let's build it. So that's what we did.
I love that. I think it's, I know we obviously go back a long way, and I think there's a lot to be said about I started in digital advertising in 96, and so I'm coming up to 30 years. You're on 30 years as well in this industry. And I feel like I've taken the good bits, all the good bits. And for us as well,
Yeah.
we started as a remote first, and we were always going to be remote. And so therefore, you and I, we've done it before it was cool.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I think that I'm so pleased that companies are getting it and embracing it, because I think that's been a big game changer for how it shows you can do business and you can therefore give that work-life balance. So all credit to you as well. We're ahead of our time, Tamara, I think is the basic takeaway.
Pioneers.
Well done, the two of you. I'm happy to be along for the ride. Tamara, you talked about social and social element being, over 20 years old. When we think about social media and how quickly things are constantly changing, advancing, and having to pivot, how is it different now to how it was when you first set up social in general? And what remains at the core of what you do?
It is a great question because social media changes so quickly. And, what brands are doing, TikTok is so much bigger than it was years ago. But fundamentally, people don't really change. So we're kind of just seeing how people behave, and it's very much sort of marketing on social. So the platforms, I love that they're all changing. I love that, the way that we work changes, but fundamentally things have also not changed. But something that is very much at the heart of what we do is about brand protection and brand safety. And it doesn't always get the sort of love that it deserves because it's perhaps not the most interesting side of things. But I kind of just feel that we're working with super fans. So when we sort of work with Dr. Pepper, for example, we're looking for influencers and then we connect with them and we just do like great content on TikTok, but we also speak back to the consumers and give them a bit of love. And people absolutely love that. But also, I strongly believe that social needs to be safe and we have a responsibility to do things in a safe way. So, yeah, I would say that kind of brand safety and looking after communities is still at the heart of what we do.
Amazing. Anything you've left behind or would like to leave behind?
X?
Yeah, yeah, I know. We don't really recommend that our clients use X anymore. It is just a sort of a bit of, it's just such a difficult place now. So
Womp womp.
It's one of the biggest recommendations of the end of year reports that we did. Was our honest feedback was we didn't feel that X was serving our clients well. It's not a place for really B2B. And I personally think, as a huge ambassador of brand safety and fighting the fight for brand safety, I can't in all honesty say that it's the right platform to be on from a B2B perspective.
Yeah.
Personally, it's way too negative Nancy for me.
Yeah, agreed. I would like to pose this question to the both of you, since we're talking about how you started out together and you've known each other for so many years now. How do you feel after all this time in the industry? And it sounds like it, but are you still excited and optimistic with the industry in general and your work, or have things changed at all?
You go first, Tamara.
Yeah, I was about to throw you under the bus. Okay.
I know you
Okay,
were.
I'll go first. So I would say I absolutely love running my company, and I'm still incredibly motivated by my team, by the clients. And, you know, what I was just saying, that social never sleeps and it changes all the time. So I do like that. I think it's also helped running two companies. And I think sometimes people do get quite surprised at how I've managed to do that. But I like keeping busy. And I think if I got bored, it would be the death of me.
Yeah.
So I think that means that I'm sort of constantly changing things. And I think our industry is perhaps a lot more focused on inclusive marketing. So I think that is something that is making me more optimistic too. That, you know, when I started out, it wasn't really a sort of a big part of the discussions that people were having on panels. But I think that focus is something that we need to kind of still hold up there, and it's changed. And I do see that is changing. That does make me optimistic.
I think that's good. That's so powerful.
Thank you.
What you described then yourself, we focus on this thing called saboteurs. It's positive intelligence, and you can do a saboteurs test.
Yeah.
And my top two saboteurs are restlessness and hyperachiever. And you use saboteurs for good, but you have to understand how they can sabotage you. And the good in that is I'm very similar. I can get very bored very easily, and I have to be high energy all the time. And I think from my side, Kasey, in answer to your question, I feel excited every day, but that's because I think what we do at the Digital Voice all the time is changing the direction, adding to the team, adding new products, adding new services, flexing it all the time. And obviously I like to have my other hats on, like the UK SAFC, Stop Ad Fraud Coalition, Digital Leading Ladies, and are still part of Bloom, and all of those, and Spill, of course. And I think that's important. You keep pushing yourself. And we're always trying to say to people that you go from don't go into the comfort zone.
The growth zone.
Keep going from fear to grow, and back to fear, and back to grow. And last year, I think the industry felt a huge weight on its shoulders, especially in, for example, adtech. It was tough. People have come out of it a little bit battle worn. So I hope this year people can fall back in love with the industry and with the excitement and the energy and the innovation that happens. So for me, I'm all about pushing that positivity.
I love it. Thank you both.
There is one thing, though, that I am a bit frustrated by. If I think about what I'm not excited by, and that is the fact that we're seeing this worrying trend towards more female CEOs jumping ship, really, giving up.
Yeah.
You know, you've had 22 years as a CEO under your belt. What's the reason that so many female CEOs reach a point and go, that's it, I'm out? And what support should they have? Or is anything we can do, or what we can advise on that would stop that trend?
I think you just touched on it, actually, because I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's hard work running a business. It's hard work being a founder, and energy levels can be really affected. And you know, we've gone through, was it 3 years in the pandemic?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't quite remember. It's just, but you know, we have to sort of acknowledge that was tough. Last year was tough for the industry, as you said. It's like a low level stress.
Yeah.
And I can understand that it's just a sort of, you know, your energy goes and it's just all a bit too much. And I think something that we all have to talk about more and look after ourselves is, you know, self-care. And I think the tricky thing is, when you run your own company, your team are not necessarily going to turn around and say, oh, when's the last time you had a holiday? And, you know, you have to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
And I have become a lot better at self-care.
I was going to ask, what's your self-care? Do you walk the talk? Do you actually take time for yourself and focus on your own self-care?
I do, and over the sort of Christmas period, I went on a retreat that was sort
Lovely.
of no alcohol, really healthy eating, massages, lots of reading, and also I think this is the key one for me. I had a social media detox as well,
Wow.
so staying off your phone, because actually that can be quite a draining thing.
Yeah.
I get alerts of how much time I'm on my phone, and I'm usually about sort of 7 hours a day on my phone alone. And then there's the laptop as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that is, that's definitely the reason why people are leaving. There's probably a lot going on. But I think it is important also the power of the networks. I think that's where, when things get tough, you need other people around you to sort of check in, and maybe that gives you the strength to sort of go forward and find out how other people are doing things. And it can be, you can assume that everyone else is smashing it, and then you sort of speak to other people and go, oh, okay, actually that's a bit tough. And so I invest a lot of my time in my network.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's DLL, Digital Leading Ladies, which is a key part of that,
Woo.
and a great sort of like cheerleading energy, I
Isn't
think,
it?
from it.
Yeah.
We're very good at supporting each other. I'm also part of something called Cabal, which is run by Gemma Greaves and Dan Crester from Nurture, which is an amazing group. And again, people that I've known for a long time. And I also started my own network for LGBTQ founders, because there wasn't anything out there. I'm always a
Yeah.
believer, if there isn't something out there, go out and create it. And it's a small, well, we call it's a small but beautifully formed group that will, probably get bigger over time.
Yeah.
I'm finding that really useful, to spend time with people who get me, who are also LGBTQ, but also we hold each other accountable, and that's super important. So
Networks and community. I mean, obviously, I'm right there alongside you with DLL, and then also I have my spin-off one of Spill, which we also call small but beautifully formed. Although in January
Yeah.
we see an uptake in the sober party community, and it's great. I do a post and I go and pick up loads of people who are going, I need to change. I want to try. I'm sober curious. One of the things is that you mentioned about communities and cheerleading and support and people being able to share how they're feeling and what the vibe is, I suppose. And I was really I wanted to ask, what's the vibe out there? Is it a feeling of optimism, cautious optimism, or is it still weight on shoulders?
I don't know. I mean, I have seen a lot more. I mean, we were talking about women leaving the industry, but I've also seen a lot more women starting agencies or becoming like
That's amazing.
fractional
Yeah.
CMOs. So maybe they're sort of leaving
A full
bigger
time.
companies but starting their own, which makes me very excited. I'm always excited when women start companies. I have been known to sort of badger them and tell people to leave their job and start a company.
Yeah.
I'm such a sort of champion of it. So that is something that could well be a positive sign for the change. And when I started the social element, particularly, I started it as an agency that I would want to work at. So
Yeah.
if we imagine that there are loads of people setting up new companies with that sort of ethos, surely that will change the dynamic and the industry. So
Yeah.
let's go back to the conversation about flexible working, because it's taken a bit of a battering recently.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It seems to be a sort of like a bit of an anti-woke brigade sort of jumping in and saying that,
Yikes.
everyone should go back to the
Hate to
office.
hear that.
I know. And
It just drives me insane. It actually
yeah.
gets my back up. That insistence of those companies going, well, we've got a lease on this office space, so we need to put bums on seats, even though that when you go into those offices, all you see is people in meeting rooms on screen with other people who are at their desk. I find it blows my mind.
I've got friends that have just been told, like, all right, return to office. And it's this now like scheme where it's okay, it's 2 days a week. And then by September, it'll be mandatory 3 days a week. And the funny part is when I chat to them, it turns into like, there's not enough, like space for us anymore
Yeah.
because of the way they've expanded, or it's just like a social day where you end up being less productive because you're just kind of catching up with your coworkers while you're there in person, which is lovely. But like, is it really worth commuting, spending hours of your time plus train fare and all that just to, you know.
Well, I'll tell you what the answer is actually all you mentioned, those people, that increasing number of people setting up on their own.
Yeah.
And let's hope that there's a new wave of, again, people in a way like what we did years ago, Tamara, of going, I've seen how it's done badly. I'm going to show how it can be done really well. I'm going to build my company around my values,
Yeah.
and I'm going to bring every ounce of good that I've ever seen and use those learnings to create what I want to create. And I think there's going to be a backlash. You always find it in waves as well, especially after big layoffs.
Totally.
Those people are laid off and go on to do brilliant things.
And just for the record, I'm not saying that everyone needs to work from home every day, because I'm a real big believer in
Yeah. Of
people getting
course.
together and working together and eating together. That's
Yeah.
very, very important. But it's that flexibility.
It
I think.
is.
I'll tell you what that we do. We do now that the culture mix team at the Digital Voice has implemented like end of month lunches, like the leaping lunch for Leap Day was one we had, and it was so good because it's about, we are virtual, so we are different, that we are 100% remote and virtual. But we have Remo, which is our virtual office that we can all meet in, and we did a flipping of pancakes. So there's ways around it, even if you are remote, and it is that just how you communicate and spending time with each other on fun stuff.
Totally.
In a previous episode, we had a really brilliant conversation about greenwashing and green hushing with Gabrielle from Seeing This. For crisis comms, we can imagine, especially you mentioned clients like, Chevron over in the US. At Polpeo, how are you handling these trends and still empowering clients to speak up and get powerful messages across about some of the positive stuff?
Yes, and just to say, Chevron was like 20 years ago. We don't actually work with them anymore. So I'm just so proud of what we've built with Polpeo, actually, because I see the tangible impact that it has on the clients who can actually prepare for a backlash. Because what we do is we create these scenarios that replicate a crisis, and it's also, everything plays out on social media, but there's like news articles as well, and we have live role players. So the role players are playing like activists and angry consumers and journalists.
Oh my gosh.
And the whole thing is designed, we have this thing about failing safely, so that allowing people to test out what they're worried about. And that's the thing, you were talking about the greenwashing, but also there's been a lot of backlash around LGBTQ issues as well.
Yeah.
And I think, we saw, brands get involved with Pride most years, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. This year, or rather last year, there was a noticeable pullback from brands. And so something that we've been doing and using the sort of the tools to do is to help people get their confidence back on how to deal with a backlash. Because actually, if you've got like bigots and homophobic, trolls and transphobic trolls, it might be tempting for a brand to say, you know what, we're just not going to touch that. We're not going to, talk about what we're doing for the community, because we just get attacked. Whereas if we can show them, well, this is what it would look like. This is how people do get, attack mode. Stand up for yourself, use your values, use your tone of voice, stick to your guns. And it makes people, it's like building muscle memory. So it makes people more prepared to deal with a backlash, which makes them, I think, bolder, braver, confident marketers.
You're like armed with that knowledge. Yeah.
Is there one particular crisis that you're kind of seeing people go, yeah, I'm going to steer well clear of that topic or that difficult scenario, I suppose? Is there one that almost is a crisis too far?
Yeah. Ooh, interesting.
That is really interesting, because I think anything can happen. So I think the key thing is being prepared for all sorts of things. There is a bit of a phrase in the PR world around you can't PR yourself out of a situation that you behaved your way into. And I think the key thing there is that some of the worst crises are the ones where it kind of is the brand's fault. So I'm always quite keen not to just sort of, bash brands and say, oh, they did a terrible job there. But there are some, particularly over in the US last year. So the handling of the Bud Light crisis, I would say came under that category, that this wasn't sort of just an unfortunate incident, an act of God or doing a sort of product recall where they had to sort of manage the comms and then deal with it.
Yeah.
They created their own crisis through their own behavior and as a sort of reminder to people. So they were working with an influencer, Dylan Mulvaney,
Yeah.
a trans woman. And when the backlash got too high for Bud Light and people were literally shooting bottles of beer and threatening to boycott,
It was insane.
It was insane. And it was a really sort of like over the top reaction from consumers. But instead of doubling down and supporting the Dylan Mulvaney and their the approach that they had taken, they I believe they sort of pulled the marketing team.
Yeah.
They apologized. They sort of went backwards. They did like a massive U-turn.
Yeah.
Which then, that gives off the message to the trolls and to the bigots that they've won in some way.
And poor Dylan left completely unsupported through this chaos and with, her own following and audience of people that were then outside of going direct to the brand were actually attacking her over it all too.
I mean, they had such an opportunity there, with the memes of people like shooting the beer cans. Well, you could have had them people doing. You could have made it gone any which way. People taking the piss out of those people who are complete bigots
or shaming them.
But it did. That's an interesting one that you say that. I'm curious actually, because Tamara, both Kasey and I did the Polpeo crisis simulation in Cannes one year. Are you back again this year in Cannes to do that? Do you still do those at the event?
That was the one and only time we did the event. And it's such a difficult thing because I just don't know whether people want to actually go through a crisis workshop while they're in Cannes. But I am in talks with some people about possibly doing it. So watch this space. I would love to do it at Cannes. And
we'd sign right up, wouldn't we?
It was almost like you're taken out for a couple of hours. It's a bit like our DLL lunch that we always describe it as take 2 hours just away from all the mad meetings and the rushing rounds and the lots of things you have on your busy agenda. Take 2 hours for really from that perspective, which is about just networking, cheerleading, supporting, and taking time a little bit for yourself. And the same goes with the crisis simulation. I felt like it was 2 hours to learn, which is not something you generally walk out of Cannes doing.
Yeah.
And it's even better than it was then, and it's like an escape room. But I tell you what we are doing, I'm kind of putting my money where my mouth is. We're trying to launch an event to help brands test out the simulation pre-Pride. So to allow them to sort of actually test a scenario to hopefully have people going out more confident. So we're trying to do a conference around that because I think it, as I said, it's that muscle memory. It's giving confidence, and in comparison to what I said with Bud Light, one of our clients, Oreo, is so strong with the LGBT community, and they have earned the right to be there. I always say you have to earn the right to be there. And when they do get backlash, I think they changed their packaging to support the trans community. But they stick to their principles, and if people are sort of saying, "I'm never going to eat Oreos again," it's kind of like, well, okay, bye. And that's what you want to get to, is where brands are sort of not afraid to stick up for what they believe in.
It's amazing, and you are an incredible ambassador for LGBTQIA+. You are even on the outstanding Yahoo Top 100 LGBT+ executives list.
Go on, Tamara.
Do you feel that you're really able to make that change happen? And you're doing it with brands like Oreo, but what drives you to keep pushing that?
I'm a professional gay. Do you know what? I think part of it, I've talked about inclusive marketing, and I think it's been good to be given the platform. So sometimes I'm interviewed in the media and have opinions in our industry media. And I spoke on a panel last year in Cannes with Dentsu that was about Pride, for example. Sometimes it's just the representation, though. We talked about that there aren't actually that many female agency founders, and I'm very proud to be one, and we need more of them. There are even fewer out LGBTQ founders. So if I can just move the needle a little bit and encourage other people to be their authentic self, then I want to do that, because in our industry, it's quite a liberal-minded industry, but you still get the stage where people sometimes hide who they are. So it is about just
So
representing.
you're saying that there are, as you said, it's still in the minority in a way. So we're a little bit further off achieving inclusivity in that way, for example, in the number of founders that are. But when you talk about inclusive marketing, are we closer? Are we getting closer to
Mm.
making it feel a little bit more leveled up?
We are getting there, and there are some brilliant people out there. So if you haven't heard of Outvertising, for example, that's an incredible
Yes.
organization, and they're
Ooh.
really sort of changing things, and they've sort of got companies to be held accountable, and they're incredible. So definitely check out Advertising, and I think they've made a big difference. And then there are individuals who are really uh, changing things as well. And I think every time, if the awards change and they recognize people doing more inclusive marketing, I think it makes it matter. I do worry that we're sort of going backwards a little bit with diversity, equity, inclusion generally. I think, again, when I was talking about the backlash against remote working, there's been a backlash against uh, having DEI people in the business that sort of come from America.
And
There's
loads of budgets have been slashed as well, haven't they?
budgets being slashed, but also the sort of the anti-woke brigade, boycotting companies because they hire someone in DEI. I was like, what a weird world are we living in at the moment? So
Yeah, like why would anyone shy away from that?
so a couple of years ago, I would have said, yes, we are making
It's like-
changes. It feels like it's going backwards a little bit at the moment. So I think we need to push that forward again.
Well, you are an incredible champion of continuing to push that forward. Apart from maybe feeling like there's been areas of diversity that have been set back, could you name any other standout, thing that you feel has to change, whether it is DE&I, industry trends, or otherwise? One thing you could change, what would it be?
I'm going to get back on the remote working bandwagon again.
Yeah.
We need that flexibility, and it's so important for people. And so it's just more about embracing that fluid approach, and it is about trusting your staff. Let's face it. So that's a culture thing. If there is trust there, then people should be able to work whatever way they want.
Here, bloody
Nice.
here, 100%. Well, Tamara, you've been amazing, but it's not quite over yet because Shock Horror, you're going to have to cope with my quick fire round.
Oh boy.
Excellent.
Are you ready, Tamara Littleton?
I am ready, Julia.
Say the first thing that comes into your head. Here we go. You have had so many awards. Which one meant the most?
Oh, well, we've been winning more awards for our work, and that makes me incredibly happy. But I'm not going to lie, it was nice when I was CEO of the Year with the drum, and hopefully I can make it the double with campaign, because I'm up for CEO of the Year with campaign as well.
Oh yeah.
Next question. What's your biggest hobby outside of work?
Ooh.
You probably know this. I love singing. I sing in a pop choir. It's called Natural Voices, and it keeps me sane. We've got choir tonight, and they actually come to my house as well.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, I live in it used to be a music and drama school, and it's got a stage, so the choir comes and sings in my house.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Talk about self-care.
I always feel like here is my stage. This screen and my three screens is my stage. Okay, your next question. What's your favorite song?
Oh, there are a few. So I'm rehearsing at the moment. We're doing a musical musical theatre number. So I'm singing a song from Waitress.
Love it.
But my show-off karaoke is Edith Piaf, Je ne regrette rien in French.
Oh,
I do need the words up there.
Oh my gosh.
Can I just say for our listeners that we did before we started ask Tamara if she would sing on this, and she unequivocally said, "Fuck no." She's not a potty mouth like me. So you're fully remote, and the social element is fully remote. What's one fun thing you like to do with your team?
Eating. I just, food is my love language, and I particularly like picking out restaurants. So anytime we can get together, there will be food involved.
Oh yeah, that's a bit of me too.
Favorite food?
Favorite food? Oh, well, that's too difficult.
Just food. Food's the favorite. That's how I feel.
Okay, if we want to get difficult, I know you've got cats, haven't you? How many have you got?
I've got 2 cats. I got them from a cat rescue.
Which is your favourite?
How can you ask me that? I wouldn't ask you about your favourite children.
Fire round. No, I could answer that. Which is my favourite child?
I love them equally. Maybe I love Albert a little bit more.
Tamara, these are really random questions because I like to just go off the wall. Are you a good or a bad driver?
Well, I would consider myself a good driver. However, I don't actually drive anymore. I gave up my car probably about 6 years ago, and I haven't missed it at all. I just, public transport, trains, being driven.
Probably now a bad driver. Okay, favorite holiday destination for Tamara? You mentioned about the retreat.
Yeah, I went to a spa retreat place in Italy, and it was gorgeous, and I would love to go back. But my ultimate city, I love New York.
Yeah, I love hearing that.
I would move there in a heartbeat.
I know you were there recently as well, so at least you got to visit that recently. So you get to spend the whole day off. You're not allowed to do any work. What do you do?
Well, honestly, I probably would carry on checking LinkedIn and emails and then suddenly go, oh God, I forgot. So I'm an accidental checker. Do you know what? Probably just hanging around with my buddies and gallery, food, singing. Yeah.
Perfect day with Tamara. 2 questions to go. What's one thing you'd like everybody to know about you?
You might not know this. I used to be a really sporty person. I don't feel very sporty these days. But I represented England universities in hockey. I was a goalkeeper. So I played to an extremely high standard.
Wow. Like field hockey or ice hockey?
Field hockey.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
It had a real profound effect on me, and I think how I sort of manage teams and
yeah.
That's so much better than the one thing people don't know about me that's my claim to fame is I can stick my whole fist in my mouth. Not really the same, is it?
My God.
Still an achievement, though. Now, final question. What's your parting advice to our listeners? This is a workplace culture, but you can go in any direction, Tamara. Parting advice.
This is something that really had a transformational effect on me, and it is actually a book recommendation, but you might know Jim Collins' Good to Great.
Yeah.
But there is a fixed 56-page version which just goes straight to the important bit, which is how to do a flywheel.
Ooh.
And I tell you, the writing a flywheel for our agency had a massive impact. And ours is all about the talent, because it's about how we retain and attract the right talent, because they do everything. So, and basically without my amazing team, I'd be nothing. So
I love that.
Oh, that was lovely.
Tamara, you've said thank you so much. And you've said so many things that actually resonate. It's almost hard to do any takeaways apart from, I go back to really the start of what we wanted to cover here, which was about culture, crisis and change. And for every company and every person that's listening, take what you need from this really, because there are so many nuggets there that will help, that you need to implement. We're only going to make change and drive change, effective change, if we put in place really simple steps that are going to matter. And right at the heart of it probably is heart, because that will empower you to do the right thing, to think creatively about how you're doing it, and above all, make sure you're being inclusive and being a good person and making good decisions. So I call on everybody really to look at themselves of how they individually can drive change. But thank you so much,
Hear, hear.
Tamara. You have been amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us, Tamara. And that is a wrap on this episode. But there is a lot more on this conversation. So don't forget, you can check out our website for more reading and resources. And of course, you can connect with Tamara and check out both The Social Element and Polpeo on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Tamara. You've been a star.
Been an amazing guest. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Off Record On Point. Join us again next time for another confession from an industry game changer. But until then, I'm Julia Linehan.
And I'm Kasey Long. Enjoyed the conversation? Reach out and let us know by rating and reviewing on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to follow to never miss an episode.
You can still always stay connected with us at thedigitalvoice.co.uk and, of course, across all our social platforms. Just look out for The Digital Voice.
Join us again next time for another undercover industry deep dive. All off record, all on point.